I was taken aback by my mother-in-law's unexpected words. "I didn't expect you to afford such a place." "Well done, dear. We're more than happy to move in with you." My confusion deepened at her statement. "Excuse me," I interjected, feeling the need to clarify. "With this upgrade, I don't mind holding off on the divorce. Remember, I'm single now, Lucy, 35, working as a doctor at the Women's Health Clinic. My apartment, a comfortable 15-minute drive from work, accommodates not just me but also my husband, William, and his parents. My marriage to William commenced 5 years ago, accompanied by his condition that we live with his parents. Being an only child, I understood his familial obligations. Despite knowing this beforehand, I agreed wholeheartedly. Thus, when we tied the knot, we opted for a larger apartment, embracing life with his parents as part of our domestic arrangement. Initially, when we began our cohabitation, William's parents assured me, "As a doctor, Lucy, you're undoubtedly busy. Leave the household chores to us. Your father-in-law and I will handle everything else while you focus on your work." And true to their word, they diligently managed all cooking, cleaning, and domestic tasks, affording me the luxury of concentrating solely on my professional duties. I assumed William enjoyed the same privileges. However, our dynamic shifted dramatically 6 months later. Abruptly, William resigned from his job. Taken aback, I inquired, "What's prompted this decision? Why quit?" His response was startling. "I believe I've put in my fair share. I need a hiatus before embarking on a fresh start. Besides, even without my income, we won't struggle financially with yours." I countered, "But why such a significant decision without consulting me? You can't guarantee finding another job. What if something happens to me?" His reply was dismissive. "There's no need for pessimism. We have savings to fall back on." Attempting to reason, my mother-in-law intervened. "Now, Lucy, don't be too hard on him. William has toiled diligently thus far. A break is well deserved. Wouldn't you agree? You can compensate for his absence by working a bit harder." Stunned into silence, I pondered the unfairness of her suggestion. My workload was already demanding, and it seemed ludicrous to imply that I should bear the brunt of our financial responsibilities while William enjoyed a respite. After all, I too faced challenges. Upon hearing my retort, my mother-in-law's expression shifted abruptly. With raised eyebrows, she retorted, "Let me remind you, Lucy, you're not the sole one grappling with difficulties here. While you were at work, your father-in-law and I were tending to the household tasks alongside our own jobs without respite. If you insist on such talk, we'll cease our contributions to the household. From now on, you're on your own." Her words struck me dumb. With that declaration, my mother-in-law and William exited the room, heading to the living room to watch TV. Thus began my solitary struggle to juggle both household chores and my job. No one else would lift a finger to help. Takeout meals became a regular occurrence, likely to stave off hunger in their absence of cooking. However, their preferences leaned towards pricey options like sushi, leading to mounting demands for increased funds to cover food expenses. "Lucy, ensure there's enough money for our meals. Are you aiming to starve us?" they plead. Even when I urged restraint, my mother-in-law would counter, "How heartless to suggest scrimping on food when we're confined at home with no other indulgences. You're such a heartless person, neglecting your responsibilities to care for your in-laws." "Perhaps divorce is the answer," he declared. Exasperated, I relented, increasing the funds allotted for food, enabling my in-laws and William to indulge in whatever culinary desires they fancied. During a brief break from work, I dashed to a nearby gas station to pick up a few essentials. Upon reaching the counter for payment, I realized my card was missing and my wallet seemed lighter. Momentary confusion gripped me before I hurried home immediately after work. Bursting into the living room, I was met with the sight of a gleaming new television. "Welcome home, Lucy." "Back so soon?" chimed in William, his voice laced with fond innocence. "Isn't it splendid, Lucy?" added my mother-in-law, their faces adorned with sinister smirks. "What's this? How did you manage to afford this?" I questioned, baffled by the sudden splurge. "We had savings, obviously." "Savings," came the casual reply. My mother-in-law seized the opportunity to chime in, her tone dripping with fond gratitude. "Oh, Lucy, we had no idea you were saving so diligently for us. You should have mentioned it sooner. With your dutiful contributions, we can now enjoy even more luxuries. You've finally proven your worth as a daughter-in-law." Spotting my card on the table, I exclaimed, "Wait, did you use my savings? And how did you obtain the PI?" Their response was dismissive. It's simple to deduce. After all, we're family, my mother-in-law asserted with a satisfied grin. Using William's birthday as the PIN shows your affection for him, she added, seemingly pleased with her deduction. I didn't choose the PIN with William in mind. It simply remained unchanged since our marriage, and my feelings towards William are not as they once were, I confessed. Unfazed, both my mother-in-law and William continued their audacious demands. You haven't fulfilled your duties as a daughter-in-law thus far. There's no need to make a fuss over this. Your obligation is clear. Hand over your savings to us quietly. We expect $3,000, no, $4,000 monthly from now on. Don't try to hide your earnings. Ensure we receive our fair share, they insisted. Incensed by their shameless demands, I snapped back. This isn't a joke. Why should my hard-earned money line your pockets? If you desire funds, earn them yourselves. This applies to you both, mother-in-law and father-in-law. Show some decency and consider household finances before attempting to extort from me. The room fell into a heavy silence, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Yet it took no time for my in-laws to retaliate. Such impertinence, daughter-in-law. Is that how you address your mother-in-law? We see no semblance of gratitude from you. What use is a daughter-in-law who only brings money? Your audacity is beyond belief. There's a line you've crossed, my father-in-law seethed. William, unable to contain his frustration, stormed off to his room, though he soon returned with a piece of paper in hand. Here, he thrust it towards me. It was a divorce decree. To my disbelief, not only was William's signature present, but also those of my in-laws as witnesses. File it if you dare, but be prepared to vacate this condo. Living with a stranger is out of the question. Unlike his wife, William is capable, my father-in-law declared sternly. Lucy will overlook your outburst as a momentary lapse. However, any further defiance will lead to your divorce, they jeered, their laughter filling the room. Anger boiled within me, but so did a glimmer of satisfaction. Yet now wasn't the time for retaliation. Suppressing my urge to lash out, I calmly stated, I'll begin moving my belongings and essentials before making my way to my room. My in-laws and William wore expressions of bewilderment. Did they believe I'd beg for forgiveness at the mere mention of divorce? How naive. The divorce papers, complete with signatures, served as a stark reminder of their intentions. Swiftly, I gathered my belongings and declared, I'm leaving. Don't expect me to come to your aid, even in times of trouble. With that, I departed our condo, the divorce papers securely in my possession, seeking refuge in a nearby business hotel for the night. Taking swift action, I canceled the card William had utilized online. Upon checking my balance, I discovered that the once plentiful account, boasting over $10,000, now contained a mere $3,000. Curiosity piqued, I pondered over their extravagant expenditures. However, my savings weren't limited to that account alone. As a precaution, I had sizable reserves in 2 other accounts linked to them. Though stunned to see $7,000 vanish, I deemed it a necessary sacrifice to sever ties with that family. The following day, I wasted no time and headed straight to the city office to submit the divorce papers. With a sense of relief, I watched as they were duly accepted. To assure the finality of the matter, I double-checked my family register certificate, confirming my newfound status as a divorced individual. At last, I had severed ties with that troublesome mother-son duo. While the urge to rejoice surged within me, I remained composed, knowing there were still tasks at hand. My next stop was a real estate agency, where I attended to 2 crucial matters. Firstly, I invested in a home of my own, utilizing the savings I had diligently accrued over the years. Through this process, I came to grasp the true significance of living life on my own terms. The realization dawned upon me that freedom was a precious commodity, one that could easily be compromised. I understood the importance of seizing opportunities promptly and asserting my autonomy without hesitation. I settled into my new single-story house, reveling in its spacious living room, practical kitchen, and a coveted walk-in closet, all mine. Determined to make it truly mine, I spent the day furnishing every nook and cranny, moving in whatever I could manage. The following 3 days were a whirlwind of shopping, acquiring essentials, and indulging in the thrill of creating my sanctuary. While the expense of replacing everything was significant, I deemed it a worthy investment for a fresh start. A few days later, as I sat down to dinner around 8 p.m., the doorbell interrupted my solitude. Curious as to who could be calling at such an hour, I glanced at the intercom screen to find a familiar sight. William, my former mother-in-law, and my former father-in-law. Almost a nostalgic scene. Anticipating their arrival, I approached the door and swung it open. Before I could utter a word, William launched into a tirade. What's the idea? Disappearing without a word? It's madness. His outburst prompted his parents to intervene, urging him to calm down. William, take a breath. We agreed to discuss this calmly later, remember? His mother interjected soothingly. Exactly. Look at this place, isn't it fantastic? It's far more spacious and inviting than our cramped condo, his father added, attempting to diffuse the tension. Despite my protests, they barged into my home without hesitation. Hold on, you can't just waltz in here uninvited, I objected, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. Enough. This is as much our place as yours. What's the harm in us visiting? William retorted, brushing aside my objections. With that, they proceeded to explore my home. The furniture isn't to my taste, but I must admit, the layout is quite decent. It might even be more comfortable than our current condo, his father remarked, surveying the space. I never imagined you could afford such a place. Well done, dear. We don't mind moving in with you, my mother-in-law remarked. Excuse me, we're informing you that we've approved this condo. We'll be residing here with you. Perhaps we can overlook your past transgressions. Though your conduct as a daughter-in-law has been superb, we acknowledge your gesture in securing this residence for us. Perhaps William will find it satisfactory. I suppose I can overlook this. If we can reside here, I don't mind remaining married to you, she continued. Excuse me, who's the wife and who's not getting divorced? I interjected, confused by their assertions. The room fell silent as the three exchanged puzzled glances. I'm not married, you know. I'm single, I clarified. Rather than showing astonishment, they seemed unable to comprehend my words. What nonsense are you spouting? Do you think you can escape the consequences of your disrespect? My father-in-law retorted. In response, I thrust the divorce certificate into William's stunned face, causing a visible shift in their demeanor. Lucy, how dare you take such action without consulting us? Do you expect forgiveness? My mother-in-law demanded. Yes, I do. After all, you provided it to me for that purpose, didn't you? I replied calmly. Lucy, how dare you take such action without consulting us? Do you expect forgiveness? She repeated, her tone growing more agitated. Forgiveness. Your names were clearly stated on the divorce notice, weren't they? Including your names implies a decision was made, doesn't it? You were the ones who initiated the divorce papers, weren't you? William explicitly instructed me to file them if possible, so I did. What's the issue? Upon my firm stance, the three fell silent, their faces flushed with embarrassment. Undeterred, I decided to push the matter further. Let's not forget, you're the ones who kicked me out. It appears you've conveniently overlooked the fact that the condo you currently inhabit is registered under my name. Now that we're estranged, I see no reason to uphold that agreement. Hence, I've terminated it. If you fail to vacate within a week, I'll have you forcibly removed from the premises, I declared. Their expressions quickly shifted from anger to shock, their faces draining of color. With determination, I executed my final move. Dialing a number on my phone, I addressed the receiver. Hello. I regret to inform you that there are trespassers in my home. Yes, 3 individuals who have forcefully entered my property. Please dispatch assistance immediately. The address is... I had summoned the police. As their protests rang in my ears, I remained resolute. Don't assume you can escape consequences. One of them exclaimed. What kind of daughter-in-law are you? It's appalling to involve the authorities in family matters. Remember this. Another added, their words a futile attempt to deflect accountability. With their parting remarks echoing in the air, each swiftly departed from my home. As I had repeatedly stated, I was indeed single. Finally, my battle had drawn to a close. I had braced myself for potential retaliation, expecting them to target me at the hospital where I worked. Surprisingly, they never materialized. Stubbornly, they remained in the apartment even after the expiration of the week-long eviction notice. Shortly thereafter, I received a call from the real estate agent. However, I promptly informed them, those individuals are complete strangers to me. Consequently, they were charged with trespassing and promptly dealt with by the authorities. Each was fined $1,000, but unsurprisingly, none could afford to pay. A relative from the countryside stepped in and settled the fines on their behalf. Subsequently, they were forcibly relocated to the countryside. It's likely that by now, they're toiling away on a farm, unpaid, under the watchful eye of their relative. For me, life is unfolding smoothly. Embracing my newfound independence, I've rediscovered the joys of living alone. After years of prioritizing others over myself, every day feels like a fresh start. Moving forward, I'm determined to savor each moment and seize the opportunities that come my way, ensuring that I make the most of this precious life.
Hello, I'm Lucy, a 58-year-old woman who recently gained custody of my grandson, Matt. Today, I feel ready to share the challenging events that led to this point, hoping that discussing it here will boost my confidence to open up in real-life conversations. Let me start by introducing my daughter, Melanie. She's my only child and the apple of my eye. When she was just 3 years old, her father, my husband, passed away, leaving the two of us to navigate life together. Melanie was a bright and brilliant girl, and I cherished her strong work ethic, which eventually earned her a full ride to her dream college. In college, Melanie met Nain, and they married shortly after graduation. While I wasn't thrilled about the swift marriage, I kept my opinions to myself, simply wanting Melanie to experience the world independently. She received my advice to delay having children, focusing on her career. However, 2 years later, she became pregnant with my grandson, Matt. Although not entirely pleased with the timing, I couldn't deny a sense of excitement about becoming a grandmother. When Matt was born, it brought immense joy, and I couldn't wait to spoil him. Fast forward 2 years, and Melanie and Nain moved to another state for a better job opportunity. Despite my reluctance to be separated from my grandson, I understood their motives and learned to cope with their absence through Skype and regular calls. 8 years later, Gig returned, and I was ecstatic to welcome them back. During their absence, I communicated with them virtually, and when they returned, they delved into work, leaving Matt in my care for long hours. Despite my uncertainty about their work commitments, I cherished the time spent with Matt, and our bond grew stronger. Unfortunately, the situation began to unravel around Matt's 12th birthday. I always took part in grand celebrations for him, but that year, I couldn't attend due to a work trip. Despite my efforts to return on his birthday morning, I couldn't make it. In an attempt to make up for missing his significant day, I met with him the following day, saying, "Hey, sweetie, happy belated birthday." "Thanks, Grandma," he replied. "I'm so sorry I couldn't make it yesterday. I tried my best to make it back in time, but it was already 11 p.m. "It's okay. You made it up to me anyway." How could I not celebrate my favorite grandson's birthday? "I'm your only grandson, Grandma." Okay, you're still my favorite though. Anyways, 12 is a big age. "What did you do yesterday?" "Nothing." "Oh, come on, Matt. If you're trying to protect my feelings from missing out on your birthday, I can assure you that I'll be fine." "No, Grandma, I really didn't do anything." "What do you mean? Didn't your parents take you out for dinner?" "I sent your mom money for that." "Well, I sat at home all alone throughout the day, except for when my friends came over for a bit. Mom and Dad came back home really late from work, so I didn't do anything." "Why were your parents working on a Saturday?" "Mom and Dad picked up extra hours because they apparently needed the money." "That's odd. The least your mom could have done was tell me that they weren't celebrating your birthday. I would have had even more money to spend on you." "Grandma, that's really sweet, but I'm already used to this." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Mom and Dad are almost never home, and they always miss big events because they're too busy working." "That's so sad. How do you feel, though?" "I was sad yesterday, but I don't think I should have been." "Why?" "I mean, it's only natural to feel bad when your parents forget about celebrating your birthday. I mean, they've been doing it for so long. I should not have thought that they would have remembered." "Sweetie, that's so incredibly sad. I'm going to talk to your parents about it. You don't deserve this." "No, please don't. They'll only get mad at me, and they might not let me see you again." "But please, Grandma." "Fine, but you're staying with me tonight, and we're celebrating your birthday properly." I tried my best to push aside what Matt had revealed to me for the duration of his celebration with me. I took him out, let him buy whatever he wanted, and he seemed very happy. I was glad I could lift his mood. The next day after Matt left, I phoned Melanie to inquire why neither she nor Nain had celebrated Matt's birthday. Melanie simply explained they were busy, which infuriated me. Besides being my grandson, Matt was just a child, and no child should be forgotten in such a manner. I conveyed my concern to Melanie, but she dismissed me, telling me to mind my own business and not lecture her on parenting. Fearing she might cut off my access to Matt, I bit my tongue. About a month after Matt's 12th birthday, I received a distressing call from him while at work. "Grandma, Matt, sweetie, how's everything going?" "Grandma, I need help." "What? Why? What's going on?" "I feel really sick." "Oh, sweetie, where are your parents?" I've been trying to tell them I haven't been feeling well for a long time now, and they haven't been listening. They keep telling me that I'm fine and that they're too busy to do anything about it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain? 10. Whoa, where is this pain you're feeling? "Near my tummy, Grandma." "Could you please get here fast?" "I don't think I'll be able to stay awake for too long." "I'm already on my way, sweetie. Just keep talking to me." "How long have you been feeling this way?" "I've been feeling this way for a week and a half now, and it's always been this bad." "Why wouldn't your parents take you to the doctor? That's not right of them." "I don't know. I tried to tell them. I even went to them and cried about it, but they just brushed me off." "I'm going to have a stern talk with them. In the meantime, I'm only 10 minutes away, sweetie. I'll be there super soon." "Are you lying down?" "I'm sitting at my desk." "Could you get on the bed and try to lie down? Maybe that will ease the pain a little." "Oh, okay. Well, I'll try." "Grandma, everything's getting so blurry." "Matt, stay with me, sweetie." In a panic, I rushed over to Matt's place. While en route, I called 911 to get him help as quickly as possible. Fortunately, my workplace was only a 7-minute drive from Melanie's. I arrived before the EMTs, and upon entering Matt's room, I found him lying on the floor, his face turning blue. When I touched him to check for a pulse, he felt incredibly cold. Thankfully, I felt a pulse, and shortly after my arrival, the EMTs arrived, loading him into an ambulance and rushing him to the nearest hospital. I persistently tried calling Melanie and Nathan, but neither of them responded. Left with no choice, I resorted to leaving voicemails and messages, urgently informing them of Matt's situation. As I imagined worst-case scenarios, Matt's doctor delivered the alarming news that he had a ruptured appendix and required immediate surgery. Anxiety consumed me as Matt was rushed into the emergency room, and I anxiously paced back and forth, struggling to reach Melanie and Nathan. My frustration toward them intensified with every unanswered attempt. Thankfully, Matt's surgery proceeded smoothly, and he regained consciousness shortly after being placed in his own ward. About an hour later, Melanie and Nathan finally arrived. "Oh my God, Matt, what happened?" "Apparently, my appendix ruptured and I needed immediate surgery." "How did this happen so suddenly?" "Suddenly? Matt has been complaining about this pain for over 10 days. But how were we supposed to know it was this serious?" "Are you being serious right now? As Matt's parents, both of you should attend to every pain and illness he has, regardless of how tiny or insignificant it seems. I don't appreciate you talking to my husband that way. I wouldn't have to talk to either of you like this if you just took care of your son." "Are you accusing us of being bad parents?" "Yes, I think I've made it pretty clear. This was your only mistake, a mistake that could have cost Matt his life if he hadn't called me. Not to mention, both of you prioritize your work over Matt all the time. We do not. Tell me that when I've been picking him up at least 3 times a week from school because both of you forgot. We're working hard to provide for him. Sure, we forget to do certain things every once in a while, but that doesn't make us bad parents. You think Matt is going to care about all the money you got him 5 years down the lane? No, all he's going to remember is how you neglected him and how your neglect almost got him killed. You are overstepping so many lines. That's it. You may be Matt's grandma, but you have no say in how he's brought up or what we, as parents, do. I want you out of his ward." "But Mom, I want Grandma here. She brought me here." So I think she deserves to be here. Matt, stay out of it. Once you're nice and healed, you are going to be in trouble. Why will he be in trouble? He could have called us and told us about his pain. Instead of coming to us, he went to you, and now we're beyond humiliated and embarrassed. You can't take your feelings out on him. He's been suffering, and he reached out to the only person he knew would take his pain seriously. Okay, Lucy, you really need to step out now, or we will have to get you thrown out. He can't do that. As his parents, we will be given first priority. I just have to tell the nurse to take you out of here. Fine, but this isn't over. Matt, sweetie, take care. Everything will be fine, and you have absolutely nothing to worry about. I'll see you soon. I was beyond enraged, but once again, I decided to hold my tongue because I knew that I couldn't just abandon Matt when he most definitely needed me the most. I tried my best to get in contact with Melanie and Nathan to get updates on Matt, but neither of them answered any of my calls or texts. I could only hope that Matt was recovering nicely. That was until just a week after his surgery. Melanie called me and asked me to look after Matt during the daytime after work until they came back home. She never addressed our last conversation, nor did she apologize for how she talked to me. I let it go because I was just happy to see Matt again. The next day, I rushed over to Matt right after work and saw him lying in bed playing a video game. There's my brave and strong man. How are you doing, champ? I could be better, I guess. Have mom and dad been taking proper care of you? Well, they left me alone all day. So what? I thought at least one of them would have taken off to look after you. It was truly a miracle that even one of them stayed with me when I was in the hospital. Oh my God, you poor child. I want out of this house, Grandma. Is there anything you can do about it? Of course. I'm your grandma, and your parents have neglected you enough for me to use my rights as your grandma to take custody of you. But I don't think that your parents will be too happy about it. Who cares what they think? They clearly don't care enough about me. I completely agree. You'll be a little busy though, and you'll probably have to go to court, and it'll be really tiring. I'll do anything to get out of this house. If I could survive my appendix bursting, I think I can handle being tired for a while. Wow. Just how much damage have your parents done? You know, one time they forgot me in another state because they got too wrapped up with their own things. Another state? Yeah, one time they surprised me with a road trip, which only turned out to be a business trip for both of them. I spent the entire time in the hotel while both of them worked. One day after their meeting was over, they simply left, completely forgetting I was even there. I had to spend a whole night at the police station, waiting for them to come back. When the police spoke to my dad, he told them he was overtired, and it was an honest mistake, so they let him go. I got yelled at afterward for not calling them. Did the police say anything to them? They spoke to my dad, and he told them he was overtired, and that it was an honest mistake, and they let him go. I got yelled at afterward for not calling them. My God, they're monsters. Do you see why I want out so bad? Absolutely, honey. Let's give you another day or two to feel better, and then I'll bring a lawyer over, and we can start discussing getting custody of you. Thank you, Grandma. I didn't think I could get any more appalled by Melanie and Nathan's parenting, but there I was, listening to just a few snippets, and I already wanted to unleash hell on them. I knew that it would not be right to get my emotions involved in this situation, so I just spent the rest of that day talking with Matt and trying to make him feel better. The next day, I took a week off work, and the first thing I did was get in contact with a lawyer. He advised me to collect as much evidence as I could about Melanie and Nathan's neglect, so I started to do that. Over the next 4 months, I got Matt on board and asked him to keep track of everything. We set up a hidden camera in his room so that every conversation was recorded. Gradually, we collected more than enough evidence, along with evidence from the past and testimonies from those involved. We had more than enough evidence to guarantee my custody of Matt. With that, I filed for Matt's custody, and Melanie and Nain were summoned to court. Of course, they did not take it lightly, and I got a very angry call from Melanie. "What do you think you're doing?" "Oh, hi, Melanie. Do not try to be nice to me right now while you're trying to take Matt away from us. You have shown me one too many times how you neglect Matt. I don't want him growing up thinking that he's never cared for. That was one isolated incident, Mom. I've been speaking to a lawyer and to Matt. Matt has told me about all the other non-life-threatening ways you and Nain have been neglecting him. So you've brainwashed Matt into thinking that we don't love him either. I didn't force him to leave. I believe he wanted to go a long time ago, but he didn't realize he could. How can you even say that? This is all you're doing. You had to throw a huge fit in front of him at the hospital, Melanie. I don't think you realize just how scary it was to walk into your home and see Matt lying unconscious and blue on the floor. It took everything in me to remain calm and get him the help he needed. Your nonchalance about everything that happened to him is only making me angrier. We are not being nonchalant. You haven't even been paying attention to him after he had his surgery. Neither of you even took some time off to look after him. He's been home alone most of the time. Oh, shut up, Mom. We invited you over. He was not alone. I only see him after I'm done with work, which is around the afternoon. You and Nain leave early in the morning and don't even get back until late evening. He's alone for a good portion of the day, and as far as I'm concerned, that's major neglect. How do you expect us to pay off the surgery? Huh? That was only more stress on us. Are you trying to blame Matt for something he had no control over? If the shoe fits, you know what will alleviate you of all this financial stress? If you let me take care of Matt, he's my son. Your son that you do not care for. You can either make this easy or I will drag everything you've ever done to Matt into the public. Are you threatening me? If the shoe fits, now I have to go meet with my lawyer. You have 3 days to give me an answer. Bye. I actually did plan to provide evidence of all Melanie and Nathan's neglect to our family. Nathan's family, along with their workplaces, because I saw no reason for people like them to have children. It was only a miracle that they lived close to me, so I had some form of knowledge of what was happening on the inside. Matt was upset that his parents just did not see why they were wrong, but I stood by his side and assured him that the way his parents fought was not influenced by him or any of his actions. 3 days later, Melanie and Nathan willingly gave up their custody of Matt to me. Let me tell you, I have never in my life seen someone as happy as Matt was when he found out that his parents were signing over their custody of him. Matt cried for a good 5 minutes in pure happiness. Seeing him that happy only made my heart break even more for him at the thought of what the poor child must have gone through for years before someone even listened to him. Of course, Melanie and Nain were not very nice about handing over their custody of Matt to me after the deed was done. At first, they were low-key about it, but then the family began to get suspicious of Matt never being with them. They eventually came clean about their loss of custody of Matt, but not before blaming me for ruining their family. I received numerous calls from people condemning me as a horrible person for separating a child from their parents. Despite the criticism, I chose to ignore it because Matt was my top priority. Creating a safe environment for him took precedence over dealing with those who merely sought gossip. I weathered the harsh judgments from my family, ensuring that Matt remained oblivious to the negativity. However, things took a darker turn when Melanie and Nathan started spreading the false narrative that Matt had convinced me to strip them of custody. Matt now had his own phone and number, and he began receiving texts from concerned family members questioning why he was allegedly breaking his parents' hearts. This was when my anger reached a boiling point. While I could tolerate the accusations against me, dragging their son's name through the mud was unacceptable. I decided to take action by creating a group chat for the family members who had been harassing us. In the chat, I shared a folder filled with evidence of Melanie and Nathan's neglect of Matt. After sharing the evidence, I exited the group chat and blocked everyone involved on both Matt's and my phones. Subsequently, I heard from some family members that the shared evidence had triggered a significant backlash against Melanie and Nathan. They were ostracized by the entire family, and even their employers were informed of their actions, leading to job-related consequences. While I could empathize with their situation, I couldn't overlook their cruelty and inhumanity. I chose to distance myself from any information regarding them, not just for Matt's sake, but also for my own mental well-being. Each mention of them increased my anger and blood pressure. On a brighter note, Matt has never been happier. He has returned to excelling at school, and the joy in his life is evident as he frequently invites friends over. Humorously, I just about missing the quieter house before Matt moved in, but in truth, the child deserves all the laughter and smiles after everything he has been through. I am committed to protecting and providing for him, and I am confident that he has a much better handle on his life and himself, alleviating many of my worries. Thank you for taking the time to read our story. Bridezilla still insisted on me purchasing her $3,500 wedding dress and relentlessly mocked me on her significant day. Seeking revenge, I, a 27-year-old woman, found myself serving as the maid of honor for my sister-in-law, Christina, aged 25. My marriage to her brother, Martin, aged 28, had reached its one-year mark, and while the rest of Martin's family had embraced me, Christina remained an exception. Despite my initial attempts at kindness, Christina's uptight and mean demeanor resembled the mean girls from my high school and college days. Recognizing the futility of befriending her, I ceased efforts, and we settled into a pattern of mutual ignorance. Martin, concerned about our strained relationship, attempted to foster friendship, but Christina's lack of reciprocity led him to abandon the endeavor. The rest of the family, uninterested in forcing a connection between us, left us to our own devices. Given our history, I was surprised when Christina asked me to be her maid of honor a couple of months ago. Initially unenthusiastic about the idea, I expressed my need for time to consider before ultimately planning to decline. Christina and I barely knew each other, and she had made her dislike for me abundantly clear. Moreover, the role of maid of honor felt like a substantial commitment I wasn't prepared to undertake for someone like Christina. Despite my inclination to decline, I consulted Martin before making a final decision. He suggested that being Christina's maid of honor could be an opportunity for us to spend time together and possibly improve our relationship. Skeptical but swayed by Martin's reasoning, I reluctantly agreed, believing that Christina's invitation might signal a tentative gesture of friendship. The decision, however, came after extensive deliberation. I took a chance and agreed to be her maid of honor, only to regret it within a few weeks. Initially, she displayed a surprisingly pleasant demeanor, a welcome departure from her usual cold and gloomy behavior towards me. We had a great time planning and going out for brunch together. However, the situation took a turn when she asked me to purchase her wedding dress, a stunning but pricey $3,500 gown. Despite her mother's generous offer to let her wear a beautiful wedding dress from her own nuptials, altered to fit her perfectly, my sister-in-law insisted on the expensive dress that exceeded her budget. She explained that her current salary couldn't cover the cost, but she was determined to have that specific dress. Desperate, she appealed to me for financial assistance, knowing that my income surpassed hers. She couldn't turn to her parents or her fiancé, who both had valid reasons for not funding the extravagant purchase. Since I was her maid of honor and perceived as the designated rich relative, she felt it easier to approach me. As an investment banker, my income indeed exceeded most of her family members, but the reality remained that we weren't blood relatives. Feeling cornered, I tried to offer excuses, but her insistence wore me down. Reluctantly, I agreed to buy the dress on the condition that she reimbursed me in full afterward. Thankfully, I had the entire conversation recorded in text messages, where she acknowledged her commitment to repay the full amount. Now, armed with this information, I could use it against her. I had purchased the dress, and she was ecstatic. Her kindness towards me surpassed even her treatment of the other bridesmaids, who were her close friends. It felt rewarding for a couple of months until the wedding day when she reverted to her old self in a particularly hurtful manner. On the day of the ceremony, she not only resumed her cold behavior but took it a step further by openly mocking and humiliating me in front of her friends and other guests. While the ceremony went smoothly due to minimal interaction, she began distancing herself from me early in the morning of her wedding. During the event, she reluctantly included me in socializing, but used the opportunity to make mean-spirited jokes at my expense, making both the guests and me uncomfortable. Her cruelty knew no bounds as she ridiculed everything from my appearance to my personality, targeting my weight, nose, social anxiety, and even my perfectionism. The unwarranted and senseless nature of her actions baffled me, especially considering the positive rapport we had established leading up to her wedding. I had almost believed we were friends. Unable to endure the humiliation any longer, I confronted her privately, questioning the sudden change in her behavior. She dismissed my concerns, claiming I was being oversensitive and insisting that she wasn't making fun of me. It was merely her sense of humor. Frustrated, I expressed my discomfort with her so-called humor, but she brushed it off, suggesting that if I couldn't handle it, I shouldn't be friends with her. Left standing in shock at her callousness, I eventually lost my temper and did something perhaps ill-advised. Positioned not far from the stage and noticing the band still setting up, I seized the moment. Walking onto the stage, where the microphones were not yet in use, I delivered a speech, a decision I would come to regret. As all eyes turned toward me, I had everyone's attention. I began my impromptu speech by recounting how Christina had asked me to be her maid of honor a couple of months ago. My husband and I naively thought it could be an opportunity for us to finally bond with her. I highlighted Christina's initial coldness and my hope that this role could lead to a genuine friendship. However, I soon realized that Christina, despite the temporary warmth, remained impossible to befriend due to her unpleasant nature. Bringing up the incident where she begged me to buy her wedding dress, I expressed my suspicion that she only asked me to be her maid of honor to secure the dress. Given my higher income, she likely endured niceties for a few months to ensure she got the dress she desired. As I spoke, I noticed the power to the microphone had been cut, prompting me to shout my speech. Security started making their way through the crowd towards me. Taking advantage of the moment, I revealed the damning texts on my phone, labeling Christina as tacky, ungrateful, and fittingly, badzilla. Without looking back, I left the venue, relishing in the satisfaction of hearing her cry. On the bus home, I checked my phone to find around 100 texts from my family, including confused messages from my parents who had witnessed the spectacle at the wedding. Martin, my husband, expressed his disbelief and the need for a serious conversation. He also mentioned that Christina had become inconsolable after my departure, causing a temporary halt to the proceedings. Upon reaching home, I ignored the influx of texts from irrelevant relatives seeking drama and gossip. Instead, I treated myself to a cocktail and ordered a burger, compensating for the missed enjoyment of the wedding feast. Opting for a laid-back afternoon, I settled in front of the television to unwind. I chose to remain unresponsive to calls and texts until the evening, feeling it wasn't necessary to engage with anyone in my agitated state. The swirl of emotions, insult, humiliation, and a sense of being used overwhelmed me. Despite acknowledging the erratic nature of my actions, I grappled with conflicting feelings and couldn't muster the courage to explain myself to anyone. The only individuals I believed deserved an explanation were my parents, Martin, and my in-laws, excluding Christina, who was well aware of the circumstances. Martin returned home around 9 o'clock, and the atmosphere remained tense. He entered without uttering a word, leaving me to anticipate a conversation after he freshened up. An hour passed with no sign of him approaching, prompting me to take the initiative and break the silence. Despite his stony demeanor and engrossment in his phone, I entered the bedroom where he lay. Drawing inspiration from my unfiltered approach at the wedding, I began explaining how Christina had insulted me throughout the morning. I recounted how I had given her an opportunity to apologize or reassure me that the mockery wouldn't continue for the sake of garnering laughs from her guests. Expressing my discomfort with the humiliation, I was met with Christina dismissing my concerns, stating that I was making a fuss over nothing. This response infuriated me, particularly since I had voluntarily bought her the dress, expecting at least a modicum of gratitude. Instead, she acted as if I were overreacting, fueling my anger. Unable to contain my frustration, I disclosed this information to her guests, essentially mirroring her behavior, albeit with the advantage of the microphone. Despite believing this explanation would suffice for Martin, he remained silent, continuing to ignore me. Once again, I lost my composure and insisted that Martin talk to me. Finally meeting my gaze, he acknowledged my feelings of humiliation but firmly asserted that it didn't justify ruining Christina's wedding day. He emphasized the broader impact on his family's reputation and urged me to consider the consequences of my impulsive actions. According to him, my behavior was unacceptable, and my reaction, regardless of Christina's actions, was deemed worse. Martin contended that I had better alternatives to address the situation but had chosen an unhinged path for petty revenge. He explained that until I apologized, especially to Christina and his family, he couldn't engage with me in the same way. Despite finding it ludicrous, he expected me to apologize to Christina, placing the blame on her for initiating the conflict. This led to a heated argument where I declared my refusal to apologize to anyone except Martin and his parents, insisting that Christina was the one at fault. The impasse has persisted for a couple of days, leaving us in a state of silence. Reflecting on the situation, I grapple with the possibility that I may not be entirely in the right. While I adamantly refuse to apologize to Christina, I'm starting to acknowledge Martin's point about handling things more reasonably in my anger. It's a conflicting and confusing situation, and I'm uncertain about how to navigate the aftermath of delivering a harsh speech at my sister-in-law's wedding and making her cry. Update 1. Some of you have inquired about whether Christina reached out to me post the wedding debacle. To clarify, no, she hasn't, and neither have my in-laws. I want to make it clear that I don't understand why Christina dislikes me. Contrary to popular belief, we hadn't met before I started dating Martin, so there's no history that could explain her intense dislike. I'd like to emphasize that I wish nobody judges Martin and my in-laws solely based on this incident. They are genuinely wonderful people who have always treated me well. Despite the current rough patch, they've been loving, especially Martin, who is standing up for his family. I haven't decided whether his actions are right or wrong, but he's not being cruel or harsh. This disagreement won't break us, so please refrain from suggesting divorce. Thank you. Update 2. It's been a challenging week since the wedding. Martin and I didn't speak for the entire week, but today I decided it was time to address the situation. Acknowledging my mistake, I apologized to Martin during dinner for my behavior at the wedding, recognizing the significance of the family event I disrupted. I expressed my intention to talk to his parents and make amends, understanding they didn't deserve the fallout. However, I reiterated that I wouldn't apologize to Christina due to her unpleasant demeanor. Martin was silent for a moment but reassured me that I didn't need to apologize to her. He was just upset the other day. He acknowledged the unfairness in his previous stance, expressing it with a sense of exhaustion. Martin opened up about the challenging time he had faced, dealing with backlash from almost everyone in the family. Despite being the person he wanted to confide in, I wasn't available, making it a miserable week for him too. He shared that his parents were furious with me, cautioning against an immediate apology to them due to their current anger. He vented his frustration about uncles, aunts, and other relatives who, for no apparent reason, had been commenting on me derogatorily in the family group text. Martin revealed he had distanced himself from the group, but his parents continued to send those hurtful texts, emphasizing the family's negative sentiment towards me. Surprisingly, he advised me against apologizing to Christina, recognizing that her actions had provoked my response. Despite my willingness to apologize to the family, he asserted that I owed no one an apology. According to Martin, these people were selfish, and the incident had revealed their self-centered nature. He disclosed his futile attempts to reason with his parents and family members, asserting Christina's role in instigating the situation. However, they refused to listen, dismissing my perspective and labeling me a psycho. Martin knew that any apology from me would only lead to further humiliation, and he was determined not to let that happen. While still maintaining that my actions were not okay, he stood by the belief that Christina was not as innocent as portrayed. He advised against apologizing to anyone, emphasizing that I shouldn't apologize to his parents even for the sake of my conscience. I decided it would be more effective to address the situation when they were more receptive and open to it, If I approached them now, it would likely be futile. In a way, it turned out well for both of us. While not perfect or ideal, at least I was able to relieve my conscience with Martin. Ultimately, what matters most to me is my husband's opinion of me. Everyone else can go to hell. Update 3. Hey everyone! I know many of you have been seeking an update, but honestly, not much has changed since the last one. After Martin and I reconciled, I stopped worrying about his family's opinion of me. Martin received a promotion at work, so we decided to take a vacation to de-stress. Regarding my own parents, I explained the situation and they were okay with it. They're just happy that Martin and I are getting along. Christina and her parents haven't reached out, and I believe it's for the best. My in-laws chose their daughter's side, and I respect their personal choice without holding it against them. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update, and today I received a refund from Christina. It was surprising because I had almost forgotten about her and the wedding debacle. She texted me revealing the real reason behind her dislike. It turned out to be as trivial as I expected. Her friend had a crush on Martin, and when he introduced me to the family, her friend got heartbroken. Christina blamed me for it. I don't see how any of this is my fault, but Christina needed a reason to dislike me, and she picked that. Now that I know the reason, which seems quite silly, I'd rather not have known it all. I shared this revelation with Martin, who mentioned he always had a hunch, but never saw her friend as anything more than his little sister's best friend. Even if I hadn't been in the picture, they wouldn't have gotten together. Anyway, it's over now, and I don't have to talk to Christina ever again. Get out because I'm moving in with my family. Jeff pointed at us, loudly declaring while my in-laws were giving instructions to the movers. His face twisted maliciously, and I couldn't help but show my disgust. However, Stacy, next to me, reacted differently, asking Jeff with confusion, "Dad, you didn't know?" Hearing this, Jeff was visibly puzzled. Stacy seemed so flustered that not only Jeff, but also his mother and father stopped what they were doing and looked over at us. Nicole continued to give instructions to the movers, seemingly uninterested in the situation. Despite my dismay at the behavior of Jeff's family, I was determined to reveal a certain truth. My name is Dean Anderson, a 46-year-old remote worker. I have a husband and a daughter leading a typical life. After several dates, Jeff proposed to me 3 years into our relationship. Having a frequently ill mother, I wanted to marry as soon as possible to give her peace of mind, so I accepted Jeff's proposal. Sometime after our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Jeff was truly happy, eagerly looking forward to seeing our child. When our daughter Stacy was born, Jeff took an active role in parenting, and I lived happily. However, I had some worries. The biggest concern was about my mother. Her health improved upon seeing her grandchild, despite being almost better than before, and she visited us often. Initially, she visited frequently, but as Stacy entered middle school, my mother's health visibly declined. I quit my job to be available for my mother, choosing remote work. This decision allowed me to fully take care of my mother's hospital admissions and discharges. By the time Stacy graduated middle school, my mother was very happy when we visited her. I hoped she would gradually recover and be able to go out as before. However, around this time, Jeff's behavior began to change. Initially, he was willing to help with my mother's care, but lately he had become grumpy, complaining that I wasn't paying attention to him. "Going to your mother's again? You don't care for me when I'm tired from work, but you always look after your sick mother." He would say such incomprehensible things, and even when Stacy and I tried to appease him, he strongly rejected our efforts. Worried about both my mother and Jeff, Stacy took over caring for Jeff. "Mom, leave Dad to me. You should go to Grandma sooner," Stacy said with a smile, and I always relied on her. One day, while living this way, I received a call from my sister-in-law, Nicole. "You've been neglecting my brother lately," she accused out of the blue, making me stare at my phone screen in surprise. I pondered if there was a mix-up, but Nicole's name was clearly displayed on my phone screen. Confused by the baseless accusation, I could only deny it. "It's been a while, Nicole. What's going on all of a sudden?" I haven't been neglecting Jeff, I said, clueless as to why Nicole would say such a thing. Don't play dumb. I've heard it from my brother lately. You've been neglecting the house to care only for your own mother. Can you still proudly call yourself a wife? Nicole accused, and I was baffled. I had been focusing more on my ill mother lately, but I never thought Jeff would tell Nicole about it. However, I wasn't neglecting our home. Stacy helps with the household chores when she gets back from school, and I manage both my work and my mother's care along with the housework. Lately, I did feel like Jeff's complaints had increased, but they were about trivial things like wanting to eat at expensive restaurants or not liking the smell of the laundry detergent, things we couldn't do much about. I was not neglecting the household chores. Just as I was about to explain in detail, Nicole said something shocking. Unfortunately, this has reached our parents too. Someday, our angry mother might come to scold you. Leaving me with those irrational words, Nicole hung up. Immediately surprised by the unexpected turn of events, I was speechless until Stacy spoke to me. Mom, I'm home. What happened? You look stunned. Regaining my composure, I told Stacy, who had just returned from school, about the conversation. Stacy, too, was shocked and incredulous. Sighing in disbelief, she said, Hey, Mom, there's something I've been thinking about for a while. Can I talk to you about it? Nervously, I nodded to Stacy's serious request. Listening to Stacy's concerns made me feel truly disheartened. During a period filled with Jeff's nonsensical complaints and Nicole's harassing calls, my in-laws finally took action. One day after visiting my mother, I came home to find my mother-in-law cooking in the kitchen. Entering the living room, I was so surprised that I dropped my things and just stood there staring at her. Noticing me, my mother-in-law frowned and approached. Oh, you're back. How's your mother? Well, have a seat. Feeling her irritation, I had no choice but to follow her past me to our living room sofa, where I received a lengthy lecture. Initially, she scolded me for my attitude towards Jeff and berated me for neglecting my household duties and making my husband do chores. However, I noticed some inconsistencies in her lecture and corrected her. Mother, there are some misunderstandings. I have never made Jeff do the household chores. In fact, Jeff hardly helps at all. Embarrassingly, it's Stacy who helps me out. Hearing this, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up, pointed at me, and started shouting. Do you think that lie will work on me? Are you saying that child is lying to me? What a terrible daughter-in-law. That's enough. With her face red with anger, she stormed out, leaving the stove on and everything behind like a tempest. I hurried to turn off the stove, so I couldn't chase after my mother-in-law. That day, Jeff was in a strangely good mood, almost unnervingly generous. He kept cutting me off every time I tried to explain. I attempted to initiate a conversation, and Stacy also appeared perplexed by the situation. We decided to remain silent and observe, not wanting to upset Jeff. For a few days, Jeff continued to be in a good mood without any issues. Thanks to that, I could take care of my mother without feeling uneasy. However, a few days later, my mother quietly passed away. Despite being engulfed in sadness, Stacy and I managed to get through the funeral and then spent some time sorting through my mother's belongings at her house. I had hoped for Jeff's assistance, but bringing it up made him sullen for the first time in a while. So Stacy and I proceeded with the task, and naturally, the house was filled with memories of my mother, making it difficult to make much progress. As each item reminded us of her, I reluctantly contacted Jeff, and despite his initial good mood, he suggested we stay the night at my mother's house. However, with Stacy's school and my work, it wasn't that simple. For the time being, I told him we would return home the next day and decided to rest for the night. The following day, after making some progress with the sorting, we decided to go back to our house. As we approached our home, I noticed a large truck parked in front of it. Wondering what it was, I realized it was a moving truck with Jeff and my mother-in-law directing the unloading. Confused, I ran up with Stacy to stop them. Jeff stepped forward, puffing out his chest as he noticed us. You're back already. It's too late for you to return now. I'm moving in with my family, so you two need to leave, he declared loudly with a malicious twist to his face. I couldn't help but show my disgust, but Stacy, standing next to me, asked Jeff with confusion, "Dad, you didn't know?" Jeff was visibly puzzled, and Stacy's words caught the attention of not only Jeff, but also his mother and father. Despite my dismay at the behavior of Jeff's family, I was determined to reveal a certain truth. "Forgotten, this house is mine," I asserted confidently. The in-laws were shocked, and Jeff began to panic, turning pale. Even Nicole, who had been giving instructions to the movers, stopped and confronted me. "What are you talking about? There's no way you could afford to build such a fine house." Now it was my turn to respond with confidence. "Thank you for the compliment. This house was built by my father, and originally it's my family home." "That can't be true. This house is so beautiful. It looks almost brand new," Nicole exclaimed. "Does it look that way?" "Thank you, Mother. My mom renovated it for us as a wedding gift. Jeff should know about this," I said, attempting to clear up the confusion. It could have easily slipped his mind. But this house is naturally in my name, and the renovation costs were covered by my mother. She moved out happily to an apartment so that we could live here contentedly for a long time. Jeff and I went to express our gratitude to my mother and even discuss the possibility of living together. However, Jeff, who tends to forget things that don't suit him, appeared to realize that his plan had failed. Just as I was about to speak, Stacy began to share information she learned from the inheritance process. "Grandma left a lot of assets for me and Mom. But it's not money. It's things like land and apartments that can't easily be converted into cash." Upon hearing this, Jeff turned to his parents with shining eyes, and Nicole raised her hand in joy. "Wait a minute. I had no idea your mother had so much wealth. You never said anything about this when we got married." Jeff's outburst led his family to start complaining selfishly. "What's that? Isn't that like marriage fraud? That's terrible. You intentionally kept quiet because you didn't intend to give Jeff any of the property. What a greedy woman." From the conversation earlier, it sounded like only you two would inherit everything. My father-in-law, who noticed the most crucial part, looked at us, and I nodded clearly while explaining the situation. "Yes, the inheritance is divided between Stacy and me only. Jeff gets nothing. We found the will while sorting through the belongings yesterday." Hearing this, Jeff's family turned red with anger, especially his mother, who was the most furious. "This can't be allowed. We'll get a divorce, and then I'll make sure to get compensation from you." As his mother screamed in anger and frustration, I accepted her reaction without hesitation. Yes, I agreed to the divorce. The moment I agreed, his mother turned around and ran off, presumably to the city office, which is probably close by, to get a divorce form. Deliberately not stopping her angry departure, I watched her leave. As I watched his mother head to the office, Jeff grumpily asked me, "Hey, what are you planning to do now? Are you talking about the divorce or where you will live?" Jeff almost snapped at me, but I looked up at the house indifferently. "This house is actually already on the market," I said, surprising Jeff. Confused by my words, Jeff looked puzzled, exchanged looks with his father, and then looked back at me. He didn't seem to understand what I meant, which was to be expected. While spending another night at my mother's house, there was no way Jeff and his family could have imagined that I was selling this house. Facing the puzzled expressions of Jeff and his family, I once again spoke up with confidence. "I've always felt it every time you treated me terribly." I found myself questioning why I had chosen to marry Jeff. I had endured it for Stacy's sake, but even Stacy reached a breaking point, expressing that she couldn't tolerate it anymore. Confronted with this shocking truth, Jeff's face turned pale, and he looked at Stacy. In response, Stacy met Jeff's gaze firmly and voiced her thoughts. "Dad, you always said it was sad to be ignored as the head of the house or to be belittled after coming home tired from work. But don't you think there's a reason you're treated that way? Why don't you realize that you're neglecting and belittling us?" Stacy's pointed words left Jeff speechless. As I thought that he might just silently sign the divorce papers and sulk away, Nicole blurted out something shocking. If I knew it would come to this, I wouldn't have bothered with the renovation. Everyone present was taken aback by this sudden confession. Looking at Nicole all at once, I was surprised. Not only were Jeff and my father-in-law unaware of Nicole's actions, but her statement itself was unexpected. "Why would you do something like that without permission?" yelled my father-in-law, to which Nicole started making excuses without much concern. "I wanted to live in my ideal room, okay, so I thought, why not take over this house and renovate it while we're at it? But you're selling the house, right?" "Oh, but if you're selling it, why not renovate it and sell it for more?" Nicole's nonchalant and cheery demeanor as she said this made Stacy and me sigh. Not only were we dismayed, but Jeff and my father-in-law felt the same, with Jeff clenching his fists in suppressed anger. Finally, unable to tolerate Nicole's recklessness, Jeff began to yell, "Excess! Even if it's going to be sold or become ours, you should have told us first. We were preparing to move. Where were we supposed to live during the renovation?" Though his preamble was a bit off, his point was valid, leaving Nicole surprised. "Oh, really?" As Nicole responded, Jeff was about to yell again when we saw my mother-in-law running towards us from a distance. It seemed she had brought the divorce papers. "I got it. The divorce papers. Now sign it right here." Despite being out of breath and excited, my mother-in-law, who was handing me the divorce papers, was unaware of the commotion that had just occurred. But that didn't matter to me. I took the divorce papers from her and handed them to Jeff. "You write it. After all the times you've belittled me, you agreed to our divorce, right?" "No way." Jeff immediately refused, possibly because he knew about my mother's inheritance. However, I couldn't tolerate Jeff's behavior and his family's strange antics any longer. So I provoked him, aiming to get him to write the divorce papers. "Changing your tune so suddenly? Seems like you've been in a good mood lately, probably thinking about taking over my house, right? Too bad. Even without my mother's inheritance, I had no intention of handing over this house. It's already planned to be sold. Either way, you'll end up homeless." At my words, Jeff looked bitterly at the divorce papers, trying to control his anger and calm himself. I knew too well the points that would set Jeff off. "It might be a disgrace to you, but if you sign this divorce paper, I might feel a bit relieved." I figured that by demanding from a position of superiority, Jeff would easily be swayed to do as I wished. Given his condescending view of me, this statement was born from such thoughts, but indeed, it contained many of my true feelings. As expected, Jeff's face turned red with anger, and he snatched the divorce papers from my hand, starting to write immediately. "If you insist so much, I'll give you your divorce." I felt a sense of relief at Jeff's hasty action. I had worried that he might reconsider and calm down, but Jeff was simple after all. After receiving the half-completed divorce papers, I filled in my part to prevent any further unexpected events and completed it. I then entrusted the finished divorce papers to Stacy and turned back to Jeff's family. "All that's left is to submit this to the city office, so take all the stuff you brought in with you." Wait a minute. Are you serious? You said you feel relieved if Jeff signed the divorce papers. That's correct, but I never said I'd agree to the move. What about the renovation? Renovation? Unaware of the renovation discussed in her absence, my mother-in-law standing next to my father-in-law grabbed Nicole. After receiving an explanation, a big argument started, and while my father-in-law and Jeff tried to intervene, I attempted to leave with Stacy. However, Jeff and Nicole, determined not to let us escape, grabbed at us. But the movers, who had been watching the situation with dismay, stepped in to mediate. Amid the chaos, we heard the sound of police sirens. Protected by the movers, I looked around and noticed neighbors gathered, drawn by the noise. Seeing a police car approaching with its red lights flashing, someone from the neighborhood must have called them, and we felt relieved. But that relief was short-lived, as Jeff's entire family seemed about to attack us. Just in time, the police intervened, and we were safe. Despite being stopped by the police, Jeff's family's commotion didn't cease, and another officer had to escort us into a police car to calm the situation. Nicole, mistaking our being escorted for an arrest, attempted to throw belongings into the house and was naturally stopped by the police. With additional support arriving to finally quell the disturbance, as Jeff's family began to calm down, the police asked us to accompany them for questioning, leading to further troubles when either Jeff, Nicole, or both acted against the officers. They were arrested for obstructing official duties and taken away in police cars that had arrived for backup. Jeff's parents were also scolded by the police and taken to the station for questioning. From the police car, we observed the entire ordeal, providing a brief statement. Eventually, Jeff and I officially divorced. The process, initially resisted by Jeff even after signing the papers, was prolonged. However, thanks to a mediator, we were able to finalize it smoothly. Soon after, my house found a buyer, securing the money from the sale. Despite Nicole's push for a renovation, the house had already been renovated when my mother passed it down to me, and a buyer quickly appeared. Afterward, my in-laws were not prosecuted, but they couldn't return to the house I inherited, having sold their own house in anticipation of moving into mine. This left them without a place to live, and due to the commotion, they became outcasts in the community, struggling to find a place to belong. My claim for compensation further cornered Jeff's family. The incident became well known at Jeff's workplace, leading to a pay cut followed by his voluntary resignation. Now, he is working day jobs to make compensation payments to me and, for a short while, child support for Stacy. Balancing income and expenses is difficult, and he seems to be juggling multiple jobs to keep up with the payments. As for Nicole, after the dust settled from the incident, she continued working as a beauty consultant as if nothing had happened. However, rumors reached her customers, and eventually, upper management learned of the incident, leading to her dismissal. Despite once living a flashy lifestyle, her savings quickly dwindled. Like Jeff, she is now working multiple jobs to make ends meet, including compensation payments to me. Regarding my in-laws, there was some trouble after the incident, leading to their divorce. Now they are living separately. The mother-in-law, ostracized by the neighbors, was fired from her part-time job. The father-in-law, who planned to enjoy his retirement with his pension, had to allocate most of it to compensation payments to me and is now looking for work despite his age. They are each in a difficult situation, but this is their reparation to us, and I hope they take this time to reflect. On the other hand, Stacy and I have moved to a new house. Even if Jeff's family tries to approach Stacy's school, it's not an issue since she has already transferred. Continuing my work from home and thinking about spending peaceful days ahead with Stacy naturally brings a smile to my face. Feeling liberated from our past troubles, I plan to live happily with Stacy